Hey, Getaway, Alex here. Together with me, it's Gerald, and he is CEO of the Nomad Elite, the relocating agency. And we already have one episode with him when he answered different questions about relocating and obtaining the Paraguayan residency. By the way, he can help you not only with that, their company and his team doing much more than just that. They personally help me, but today I want to talk with him more about his particular life here in Paraguay, because a lot of time he spends here. So him as a person, let's put it let's have this video a little bit more casual. I'm just gonna be asking what are the pros and cons living here. Tell me please, maybe let's start with the very simple things. How about the expenses? Did you feel like moving here you spend more, you spend less? Let's talk about money a little bit, please.
Great question. How much do I spend here? As you can see, this apartment is a nice apartment, so I obviously spend more, but I can kind of justify it because I'm also working from home, so I want to have a place that's comfortable, right? I mean, you don't have to have a place like I have, but I pay with utilities maybe about $1,000 to $1,100 a month, which I wouldn't consider to be super cheap for Paraguay. You can find a studio one-bedroom apartments for as little as $400 to $500 a month in a good neighborhood. You can find that if you commit to a long-term rental contract. I'm living in a two-bedroom apartment. It's bigger. I am living in a nice building. I have the amenities I need during times of great heat, which we're about to enter, December, January, February, a very hot months here. So I want to make sure that I have a place I can feel comfortable in during the hotter months where I'm not going to be able to walk outside as much. So I'm going to be walking a lot on the treadmill at the gym, for the next 2 to 3 months. But yeah, so for the apartment, I would say I spend about $1,000, maybe $1,100 a month. Then for food, it really depends. I kind of like fine dining too, so I have the European blood as much as you have it. So I wouldn't say I'm living a super elevated lifestyle here, but it's certainly more than what expats spend. When I dine out, sometimes I spend $50 for 2 people. If I take my girlfriend out, I easily spend that, but I like to have a nice dinner in a nice restaurant, nice ambiance and all of that. So I'm willing to spend more to have it, but you don't have to spend $50 for, like 2 people. At a mid-range, I would say here that maybe even be mid to high range restaurant. The same would cost you multiple times that amount in the US, or if you go to dine out in Europe. It's probably pretty similar in Europe because the food standard in Europe is very high, and most middle class people in Europe like dining out at a nice restaurant. Whereas in the US, it's usually not so common, right? What else? For, I would say, cell phone plan, I spend, maybe like 15 or $20 a month. I reload my phone. I get 6 gigabyte anytime I do, which costs me 50,000 VORNI, which is the equivalent of maybe $7 to $8, somewhere in that range, depending on the currency exchange rate. So I do this a couple times a month because I'm outside a lot. I like listening to music, so I go on YouTube and I just start watching videos and start listening. So obviously I need a lot more data for that, right? Even if you download just in 240 pixels, I mean, if you do this for like hours every day, it adds up. So you consume more. Then on the other hand, it's not that much more expensive here to have a high quality lifestyle. What is more expensive here, which I'm sure you have spotted too, are electronic items. Anything that's imported, like cars, there's a heavy import duty on those. If you need anything electronic, like electronics, if you need like smartphone, if you need computers, if you need anything super technologically advanced, then you're going to spend a lot more than you do back home because of Paraguay's geographic location. So if that makes sense. Then if you like to party, if you like to go out to have some drinks, you're probably going to pay less than you do in Europe, for sure less. It's affordable. So if you have a Western income, let's say you have like 2,000 to 3,000 a month, you can live really well here. Maybe you're not going to live like a king with 2,000 to 3,000 a month, but you're going to have a very comfortable lifestyle. Where you can go out a lot, you can dine out, and you can have a dinner for as little as $5 too. You don't have to spend 20 to 30 bucks, right? If you want to make it special, you're going to spend more, right? But you don't have to. For transportation, Ubers are very inexpensive. You know this too. Like if you take an Uber and say you are located in one of the major neighborhoods surrounding the major malls, you're going to pay, depends on traffic, right? But you pay like as little as 10,000 VORNI, which is like $1.30, $1.40, to maybe 15 or 20,000. That's one way, obviously. So you're looking at what, maybe like $1.30 to $3 one way. Obviously, if you want to drive, you can buy a vehicle, but in my opinion, it's not necessary because you need to worry about parking and that takes time away from you. Whereas if you take the Uber, they just drop you off right in front of the mall and you don't have to go into the parking garage, waste time. Maybe you have to pay for parking too, even though the shopping malls like Shopping Mariscal has free parking for several hours. There are a lot of things to consider, right? I personally wouldn't get a vehicle right away. I would just start using Ubers because of how inexpensive they are. And after time, if you're like, hey, I want to get my own vehicle, or of course, if you want to live further outside, then you're going to have to get your own vehicle maybe because Uber may be inaccessible. So I hope this breaks down the living costs. Healthcare, something that I've almost forgotten to talk about, is also very inexpensive. If you need an eye exam done, I had an eye exam done. I paid about 130,000 VRNI, which is the equivalent of, I believe, $16 to $17. I had some other medical procedures done, which were much cheaper than in Europe, where I also did the same medical procedures. Healthcare is good, but you have to go to the private hospitals, right? The public hospitals, I don't recommend them. In Paraguay, don't. The private hospitals, if you pay cash, that's fine. And at some point, if you want to get private insurance here, you just go to the hospital and ask to enroll into a plan, right? But overall, I mean, we talked about accommodation, food, we talked about utilities, the internet. Electricity is very inexpensive here because Paraguay is one of the largest producers of hydroelectric energy in the entire world. So there's an abundance of it, and that's why it's cheap. As supply weakens over the years and decades, I'm sure it's going to get more expensive, but right now it's fairly inexpensive. And that's pretty much all you need, right? Shelter, food, shelter, utilities, transportation, insurance, healthcare. That's pretty much what you need.
Thank you for the answer. And also in our conversation before, you mentioned this, that probably if you're looking for the longer term stay, look for the place with the power generator, correct? Because if there's some, I don't know, for example, some blackout can happen, at least you can have some common areas, as we discussed before. For example, the gym or whatever, reception where you can, stay for just in case something happened. You can stay an hour or two somewhere in, I don't know, a lobby where, you can be in a nice environment instead of being at a very hot room or apartment. We cover a lot of it. However, again, there are some people who might relocate and they are looking for some fun, or they are looking for a partner, because it's always fun to have somebody. You mentioned that you have a girlfriend. I don't want to dive into your particular relationships, but maybe you can generally explain what is the dating scene, how is the dating life, what is the culture here? Is it possible to meet up the person that you want to spend your life with, or the friends, or maybe there are some social events happening? Could you elaborate?
Sure. I mean, as a rule of thumb, you can find everything you want here. You can find short-term relationships, you can find mid-term relationships, and you can find long-term relationships. Now, as we've talked a lot about this topic in our videos, Paraguay is a conservative country, and if you date normal women, I would say it's going to be hard. You're going to have to put in more work, and you can meet them online, but I personally wouldn't. I would just, like you're learning Spanish. I'm improving my Spanish too. I'm not perfect, and I don't claim to be perfect, but I just try to improve incrementally, and over time, hopefully, I will eventually reach a C1 or C2 level. So that's what I'm trying to do, but yeah, you can find everything and anything here. Now, Paraguay is a Christian country where a lot of things are valued by a good chunk of the population. Conservatism is a top priority for many women, and sometimes you hear a very polarized statement about, if it takes too long, the woman's not interested in you, but that's so far from the truth, because you got to have a look at the person's childhood, their parents, and I call it their umbrella. They're under their own umbrella, right? So you have to know what their umbrella looks like for you to understand her. That's very important. So you can find women, just by walking down the streets, going into businesses, starting to talk to people. A very popular way to meet people in Paraguay is obviously through, like, in any kind of meetups. You can meet people there. The more frequently you visit those meetups, the easier it will be to connect. And you know how people are. The more often they see you, the more they like you, because they get to know you better on a personal level. Whereas if you only show up one time and they never see you again, it's like, oh, this guy only showed up once, I don't know anything about him. But if you keep going regular, if you become a regular at certain places, events, then it's just going to be much easier for you to connect with people. So it always goes back to commonalities and finding something you're interested in, In fact, you don't even have to find it. If you have interests already, you come to Paraguay, you just try to find people with the same interests, whether that's a book club, whether that's like, if you like playing games, like board games, card games, right? If you like sports, you just join these groups and meet people for the groups. And in my opinion, that's a much better mousetrap than meeting people online, because you get to see them in person, you get to see how they are, you can pick up on their body language, what they're like, their personality type, and that's just a lot better than online where you never know who you're dealing with, in my opinion. So I don't prefer that. I'm much more of a outdoor person and just meeting people, because you asked for my experience, right? So I'm just telling people my experience. There's more than one way to skin a cat, no question about that, but that's just what has worked for me. I've also met my girlfriend locally in Paraguay. It was not on a dating app. It was at a completely random place. Started out with a completely random conversation. I had no interest in anything. It just started out like that, and it was natural, and that's why it works. If you force something, it doesn't work. Just be like water, adjust to the terrain you're in, and I think you're going to be fine.
Thank you on that. And if you don't mind, I'm going to also jump in on that. From my personal experience, I've been dating as well in different parts of the world. And sometimes you just need to, especially if you're traveling solo or you are living solo, let's put it this way, because of your lifestyle or whatever it is. Or if you're not, let's put it this way, try to go somewhere by yourself. Let's put it this way, because in this case, you're gonna let the miracle to happen, if I may say that. If you gonna be visiting those kind of places, social events or sports and stuff, you're gonna find the people by interest. You're gonna find some acquaintances which might lead to something more than just acquaintance. And as we already discussed, it's very easy to break the ice here, because you're in Latino America, so the ice here it's not exist, because it's hot and because of the warm-hearted people. Yeah, one more thing that I was thinking to ask you, it's I think some people, especially who live in a Western world, they might be a little bit, I don't want to say disappointed, but they copy paste their life or the model, how they live, the way how they behave, and they want the same here. For example, I can tell that coming from again, capital of Ukraine, Kyiv, it's very business oriented, very fast paced environment, where people sometimes having 2-3 jobs and stuff. We really love to, we have to work. That's the thing. And then I know some of my compatriots who are arriving to Latin America, and they, for some reason, they want to stay here, and they expect the same pace of life, but they need to kind of chill. And I think only then it's my work. As a person who's living here, maybe you can elaborate more on that, please.
I think it's always good to come to a place with an open mind. No place is the same. Places are different. And once you come here with this mindset that I know what I stand for, but I'm also willing to listen to what the local culture is like, you're going to have a much easier time integrating. So I think the openness is right on top of my list of requirements for moving anywhere. Because if you come with a set of prejudice, or you have like a closed mind, that's usually not a very good way to start out living in a country. And you're a very open-minded person. I know that you are very connected to the places where you go, from what it sounds like. You just let yourself emerge into the places and the people, because you're open. Right? And so you have to be open. Like, openness is the starting point of everything. If you don't have openness, you don't have anything as a nomad, as an immigrant. So you have to have that. And then I feel like naturally you also want to allow yourself time, because this place is very different to your native country. So, we talked about this a lot, how some people bring all their habits with them, but they're looking to escape their native countries because they're not happy because of the traits and how they develop back home, yet they are bringing these traits with them here, being unwilling to change. I don't see how that makes any sense rationally. So when you come here, you just have to be completely open about where you stand in your life, what you want. And if you're not happy with the results you've generated back home, you're not happy with the cultural identity you've embodied for a long time, you want to come here with an open mind to change your cultural identity to something that's much more traditional, that's much more ancient, and that makes you a happier person, I think. And we talked about consumerism in another video and how that's a big drawback to a lot of people. And it's why they're looking to escape Western countries to settle down, maybe in a place like Paraguay, where consumerism is kept at a bare minimum, where people derive happiness through everyday things that are obtainable without the use of money, such as communication, right? Spending time together, simple things, going for a walk, at the park. These types of things are much more attainable. And, we talked about happiness and how that's very prevalent in Paraguayan society. Whereas in other societies, the capitalistic aspect of the society makes it just very hard to be happy unless you keep going with the cycle. I mean, America is just the perfect example. America is the prime example of a society that's basing its happiness completely on consumerism. Like, you can't do anything without this element, consumerism. If you don't have consumerism in America, you don't have anything. You're not accepted in society. Whereas here, you're accepted in society if you integrate and if you communicate with the locals, which in my opinion is a much more healthy approach long term, because you can have it every day, without killing yourself. And you talked about how people in Ukraine have 2 to 3 jobs just to make ends meet. Paraguayans don't do that. Of course, if they had 2 to 3 jobs, they would have a much more elevated lifestyle. But a lot of people don't want that. And what's wrong with that? Nothing. There's nothing wrong with being happy with less. In fact, less is more oftentimes, and slow is fast. So you can come here. My number one recommendation is to come here with an open mind and experience this place and see if it's for you.
Gerald, I think that was very eventful. I would say very informative answer. So thank you for that. And I think that was very informative little interview that we had. By the way, as I already mentioned before, Gerald has his own professional channel where he talks not only about Paraguay and Argentina or other places where you can relocate. He also talks about different aspects of life. And actually, I found them very, very useful. Thank you very much for this. Guys, stay tuned for more videos from Paraguay, Argentina, and all around the world. Thank you.
Thank you.